And CBS 4's Jim DeFede is back with us. Jim, the Biden campaign has brought its star surrogate back to the state of Florida. President Obama talking earlier this evening at FIU. Talk about the strategy there.
So I listened to President Obama speak, and clearly his entire mission was to get people to vote, to get the turnout that they need. There's a feeling that in Miami-Dade and a few other counties that the turnout numbers among Democrats are not as good as the turnout numbers among Republicans. So that was a strategy of bringing President Obama down. Now, you heard in Natalie Brown's package that there's this increasing concern about the African-American vote, and is the African-American vote going to be there? Will the African-American vote, if it doesn't turn out, cost Joe Biden the state of Florida and possibly the presidency? This is a really interesting question because it's a lot of weight to sort of put on the African-American community. And recently, Pharrell, just yesterday, I believe it was, voted. He's a Miami resident. He went to an early voting site, and the folks from the United Teachers of Dade caught up with him and asked him about voting within the African-American community, why it was down. I want to play that sound and then come and talk about on the other side.
Well, first of all, I think black people are humans.
That's right.
Right? So they want to vote just like everybody else. We've been marginalized for not decades, but centuries. So I would urge everybody to vote. When we say that, it's like saying like black people don't vote. Like, we vote. We've just been handed our by all the parties. But we vote because we know that there are power in numbers. We need everybody to vote.
Absolutely.
Of course, all of my brothers and sisters know that. But it's not just us. You got to think about it. We're less than 13% of the population, right? We're 340-something million Americans, and we're north of 30 million. It's not just us. What we really need is the bulk of everybody to understand.
That's right.
That they need to vote. It's not just us.
That's right.
They'll continue to say, oh, the black people this, they need to do this and they need to do that. No, really what it is the country. The country needs to understand it's important to turn out in numbers.
See, now, I think that is such an important point. Like, we're going to suggest that if Joe Biden doesn't win, it's because the black vote failed him. He makes an excellent point. The black vote is 13% in this country. It's incumbent upon everyone. And when I listened to President Obama, he didn't segregate voters. He just talked about voting in general. Everyone needs to go out and vote. And I think sometimes as pundits and as analysts, we tend to focus on subgroups so much that there's a risk almost of saying if this group doesn't do this, then they're responsible. It's on everybody to turn out to vote, whether or not you're African American, Cuban American, or anything else. And I think that point that Pharrell was making is one that often gets lost here. And if you were wondering, yes, that was Chef Andreas standing next to him, also at an early voting site. He's been down here for the last couple of days.
Right, Jim, some star power here indeed. Now, President Trump's massive Opelika rally offered up a lot of red meat and a lot of Florida political power, with Florida's high-profile delegation, Senator Scott and Senator Rubio, as well as Governor DeSantis and members of his cabinet. Now, in a race that's predicted to be extremely close, what's the benefit to the president that the campaign stays the course on the inflammatory attacks?
Look, it's about throwing as much red meat. This is not an election that is going to be decided by trying to persuade voters who are uncertain who they will vote for, the undecided voter. This is about trying to get as many of your supporters to the poll as possible, and it's also about then trying to find voters who may not have voted in previous elections, but who align themselves now with Donald Trump and get them to the polls. This is something that actually both campaigns are doing. But what you're seeing from the president is throwing a lot of red meat out to his folks. Look, Democrats do that as well. They hit those hot button issues, but nobody can press those buttons as well as President Trump can when he talks about socialism and sort of the hyperbole that we hear from the president is not something you typically hear in presidential races, but there's been nothing typical about Donald Trump's presidency, so we should expect nothing else.
All right, Jim DeFede, thanks as always for your insight tonight. We'll be checking in with you, no doubt, a lot over the next day or so. Now,